I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Calhoun.
Here.
Puseby.
Here.
Kirsch.
Here.
Kissinger Wolf. Long.
Here.
Scuball.
Here.
Swinty.
Here.
Baloo.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here. We have a quorum. Next item is to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved, Kirsch.
Long second.
Okay, motion to second to approve or adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next one is staff recognition. The board would like to recognize Connor Ahrens, who's sitting here, for his effort as part of the Powwow Race Committee in organizing and facilitating this year's community 10K, 5K, and 1 mile kids run, fun run events. This year's event saw 610 participants, that's quite a few, with a significant amount of money raised for the race committee, which is an active contributor to our cross-country program. This event also funds an annual running scholarship fund for a Tomahawk student. The event was well organized and a great way to begin our community's 4th of July festivities. Thank you for representing our cross-country program and school district in such a positive way. Connor, if you can
Thank you guys very much for the support and appreciation.
Explain what a fun run together.
how does that
It's just as fun. Ask your rest of us.
Well,
Was that how many
You.
have they had in the past? Is
Usually
that
it's like 500 some. But
yeah, so
our
you
record's-
exceeded that.
Oh yeah. Well, the record's 642.
Okay,
So we were close.
good job.
So it was a good year. So
Good
everybody's
job.
spreading the word. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was an awesome event, and it was great
Thanks.
weather too.
That was your first time doing that, organizing that?
Technically, second time, Z was still kind of helping me, but I guess if you want to count first time without him ever being there, yes.
But you did a good job. It was very well organized.
Yeah, we did well.
Thank you so much.
boy.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good job.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, next item is the consent agenda, and there's several things. Whoops.
This could be.
Oh,
District administrator.
oh, how could I miss you?
I don't know.
I was just checking.
Just movement there.
Sorry.
No problem.
You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, I'll squeeze it in. I know it's getting hot. A couple of things. I just wanted to give everybody an update first and foremost on summer school and recognize Megan Barker for her efforts. I know I've done that in the past and I've updated you guys on where we were, but we did end up with well over 400 participants. So students that participated in summer school. Obviously, we incorporated swim lessons, so it is still ongoing throughout the summer in that capacity. We had over 50 other course offerings that students could partake in, and all in all, we had 19 teachers and 7 paraprofessionals that were, part of this over the course of the summer, which it's not always easiest to recruit staff at the end of the school year to come in and teach a different class, and sometimes design and write the curriculum for it. But we try to make it more enrichment, but also have some learning components in there as well. And I think they did a phenomenal job with it. So it seemed like it was definitely very well organized and well ran. I got to give thanks to Colleen too. She does a lot of the behind the scenes skyward work and making sure that the classes are set. So, but it seemed very positive, and that's what we want is our kids having a different opportunity to interact here.
Are the
at
numbers
school with
getting
each
better,
other.
Wendell, each summer, or are they?
This is the biggest that we've had since
Okay,
I've been
very
here.
good.
Even pre-COVID, I don't think we hit over 400. So this was a good year for it. Now, granted, we had a lot of extra things that we built in because of the grant. So we'll be looking at that and seeing what we can afford to do in the future. But we're going to try to maintain it the best that we can. So, couple of legislative things. So, WASB has been sending out a lot of information around Title IX. So I sat through a couple of webinars that they've put on. They're currently in collaboration with Boardman Clark Law Firm to develop a lot of the training modules that both administration and staff will have to go through this year. But they've also been updating, each week on really what makes the new Title IX changes different from what we saw in the past. So a lot of the training modules will be done in the very near future. We will have them for staff by the time staff roll in here in our August in-service. The administrative modules will be done before that, so we can get those out to administrators beforehand. The updates, we have 2 policies that we will look at tonight, an update to the current and existing policy for Title IX, and then there's a new policy that after August 1st, any incident that is not only reported after August 1st, but also reported as having occurred after August 1st of 2024 will fall under the new policy. We'll have to keep the old policy on the books for, the statute of limitations on reporting anything. So even if it's reported 3 years from now, but whatever the statute of limitations would be, but it's reported to have happened prior to August 1st, we have to go back and use that old policy to investigate it. So it's kind of convoluted that way. Many of the new regulations extend added protections to LGBTQ students, to gender identity issues, and also some additional coverages for students who are pregnant, among many other things, but that's been the main focus so far with WASB's trainings. The challenge, so the implementation of the new Title IX regulations has been challenged in federal court. There were a number of states that successfully challenged these, and the judge in his ruling implemented basically a stay, saying that they don't have to implement these at this current time. The caveat to that, and I believe that happened in a Kansas court, and the caveat to that is the judge's ruling also said, because there are a number of advocacy groups, national advocacy groups, that were a part of this lawsuit and bringing it forward. So he gave them until Monday of next week to outline any school in the country, regardless of what state they're in, that they have an affiliation with. Now that could be that they have a parent who has a child in that school, and they could list that school and it would become part of that ruling. So, and I'm sure there's much more to it, but that's the way it was presented today, which means I don't know if we're on the list. I don't know if our school will be named, but if we are a part of that, then obviously we'll have our legal counsel look into this, or we'll use WASB as legal counsel to guide us through what the best steps for us would be. More than likely, we'll continue with the training, but as far as the implementation of certain things, that might be on hold for us. So we will see and know more about that early next week as that list becomes public. Any questions on Title IX? I know they've sent you guys some stuff as well. So right. The other thing that you probably have seen is every year, July 1st, we get the preliminary equalization aid allocations. Now, these are just estimates. Always, whenever we talk about equalization aid, it's important to say, I did provide you with some talking points that WASBO put out recently. So if you get questions from the public, it gives you a pretty good indication of what and how equalization aid changes from year to year and what it's based on. But those are some of the talking points or a memorandum that they put out. So I thought that would be beneficial for you to have. But some of the pieces of it that really, we always want to focus on is equalization aid, and you'll see that in there, always has an inverse relationship with our property taxes. It's never, when people see that in the public and it says we're getting, I think this year, $237,000, $237,390 increase in equalization aid. That's not spendable dollars for school. What that is basically it goes right to our tax rolls. So the equalization aid subsidizes our tax rolls, and that's less that we have to put out on the levy. We can still only fund or only raise through taxes a certain amount of money, and this just offsets who's providing that money. That's ultimately what it is. So the July 1 estimates that you see typically are not the same or even very close to the final numbers that come through. And the big difference is the July 1 estimates are based on what we budgeted as far as expenditures. And what we budget each year in expenditures is always different than what our actual audited expenditures are in the fall after you get closer to finalizing them. So when October 8th, they'll have another estimate, of the allocations, and that one will be based on the actual audited numbers that come out at that time. So realistically, equalization aid there's a finite amount of money that they allocate in the budget each year to equalization aid for schools, and the formula for the allocations is based off of your previous year's expenditures, your property values and how they fluctuate, your student populations and how they fluctuate, and it's built in 3 tiers. So ultimately, the number that we show on here, we show a 13.46% increase. I don't know exactly where we'll really be with that when the actual numbers come out. So nonetheless, I'd rather see that number than to see a decrease or see those numbers going down. So that was pretty much all I had for my report. Any questions on the equalization part? I know it was in the news as well. So.
Any questions for Wendell?
You need a whole class on it again. If you really want to do it.
Okay, now I'm at the consent agenda, I believe. First item is a number of hirings and resignations, some changes. Any comments on any of those, Wendell?
No, we're very close to being fully staffed. We just have a few positions out there yet, so we're optimistic that we'll be able to fill those, or at least have a plan in place for providing coverages for those coming in the fall. So definitely want to welcome everybody that's a new hire and coming into our district.
Okay, the rest of it is pretty much like the other consent agendas we run into with minutes. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Abstain.
Abstained? Okay, 1 abstention. 9, the code of conduct. Anything on that? Ryan, you're going to speak to it?
Yeah, Ryan will speak to that. So basically, I don't think we've done this in a while, but each year, just like our employee handbook and some others, Ryan reviews this one and has some recommendations for changes.
Yeah, so obviously the code of conduct, for people that don't really follow it, it's what if our athletes get any sort of grading issues with academics, or they get caught breaking some sort of laws such as the vape pen in school, things like that, this is what gets applied to them in terms of our athletics. With that being said, it has been updated for a while, and I look to update a more restorative approach for our students, and kind of some language in there to give us a little more flexibility based on individual stuff with the kids to help the kids out and not more or less prevent them and slap them on the wrist and have them kind of get thrown to the side for being involved with things at the high school. So what Wendell should have sent you in red would have been my updates for it. First one I'm going to talk about, the big one part of it is the academic end. Right now in the high school, at our progresses, if a student has an F, they have to sit out 5 days and minimal 1 game. Sometimes with all those progress comes out, the student maybe is missing an assignment, this and that. And if it's basketball season and it goes on a week where we have 3 games that week, all of a sudden they're sitting out 3 games instead of 1 versus others. So what I look to incorporate in that in written language wise is after the progress grade comes out, if they're able to clear up 2 days, like if they had missing assignments or they had to go back and retake a test to get that grade back to passing for the semester, because the semester grade is what matters for the GPA and the academic side for graduating, that we get rid of that 5 days and be like, yep, 2 days, you're good, we're going to still set 1 game because you had an F at progress. Or in terms with flexibility of it is written where it's minimal 5 days. If we have a student that, for example, this spring we had a student in track that was at 20% for a semester grade. And I talked to mom, and mom agreed, and we ended up pulling him out for 4 weeks for that class. He was a senior, he needed that class to graduate semester. So he spent the next 4 weeks, instead of going to track practice right away, he was going in working with English teacher, got that grade up passing for semester, that way he was able to walk. So it allows me just a little more flexibility to work with the students and parents in terms of, hey, you failed, let's get this taken care of first. If you get taken care of, we'll get you back sooner. If you prolong it, we're gonna pull you out, because at the end of the day, the academic side is what matters to us. And this is a privilege to be a part of sports. So that's the first big change in there. Second change is underneath the changing activities, we had said student cannot change during the season. So again, we had an example this fall. We had a kid that was out for football. He's also a hockey player. Was playing really well in football, and then he just went to the coach and he goes, you know what, I just don't want to play. I don't like handling kids. And he also is a pretty talented cross country runner. So Coach Riley said, you know what, I'm fine with that, but I want you to get involved in something. So we worked with Coach Riley, myself, and Connor, and got approved, and he went over to the cross country side of things, did his acclimatization for that sport, and worked and ran on the JV team for cross, so he's still all for athletics, so it wasn't just he was done and not doing anything, gave him the opportunity. So I just wrote language there that as long as the student communicates proper paperwork, coaches are okay with it, we're gonna do it, but then also wrote in, can be denied by the activities director, because if we get the example of a kid's like, you know what, I just don't like the sport, I'm gonna quit and go do this one, that's not gonna fly. There's gotta be a decent reason for it, and again, it's working with the kid and making sure it's helping the kid in the situation, not just, yep, go ahead, you can switch because you don't like that sport. So that was the other big change. And then the last stuff I put in, I changed our appeals process. I made the committee smaller. We had a lot of people, unnamed people in that. So I changed it, so there's 5 voting members for any appeals that come through. The building principals, Stacy and Ryan Hughesby, are the facilitator of the meeting. I would be on the committee, 3 coaches, and then 1 activity, because I do feel our clubs need to be involved. If the student's not out for a WIA sanctioned sport in school, then that committee flips where it's 3 club people and 1 head coach on the committee for voting. So if they appeal, that's just our new committee's appeal. That way it's a 5-person vote, 3-2 on what we decide, so we don't have a tie with if they look to reduce that. And then add to that is I add in for the student to be able to appeal their first code violation. So we're really unique compared to other GNC schools with how our code's written, that we have, when a kid has a first code violation, it's automatically 60%. Now, if the student is out, let's say at a park, or they're in their backyard at fire, and their parent leaves the beer hall and they drink the beer, and they come in and be like, you know what, I had a beer this weekend, I'm gonna self-report myself, it goes down to 20%, that's the honesty clause. Then the secondary that it could be reduced to 40 with what's called the reporting clause, which is, hey, they got caught, or someone witnessed them doing it, and they came forth and said, yep, I did it, I did get caught. It sort of reduces where 60 is like, nope, caught red-handed, I'm denying it. So with that being said, with again making this more restorative, is allowing kids to appeal that first one. We've had instances in the past, especially around COVID time. We had a party that spring right after the winter sports season. Some kids got caught out at the party. Some of the kids went self-reported right away. Boom, they lost their spring sports season, carried over into the fall. Now they're sitting out of their fall sport because they couldn't serve their suspension. So with the appeal process, it's given students, if they want, they have to do a written notice to our building principals within 10 days. It gives them the ability that, hey, I want to reduce my sentence. How can I work with you? So whether that's taking AOD, A classes, extra guidance, community hours, it's up to the appeals committee to decide, yep, you know, this person's pretty remorseful, let's help them out. Go work with community members. We had a student this year who was on a year-long suspension, and he went to the committee. He actually did $100 of community service through the fall into the winter until the 6 months were up, so he could come back sooner instead of being out the full year his senior year. So I have it written in that way because I want to look at more. If a kid makes a mistake, yep, made a mistake. You're going to face some sort of consequence for it, but in the long run, I want to be able to help these kids, and all the coaches agreed on this end of it, and being able to help the kids. You know what, if you want to earn your way back and do a little extra work and help around the community and go pick up trash or something, we're all for it. I'll sign off on it, I'll monitor it, I'll be in contact with the people that they're working with to make sure they're getting that exact hours and give them an opportunity to reduce their suspension down further. And at the end of the day, if they have a code violation, they're still going to sit 1 game. But have a kid miss 40% of a season because they made a mistake in the off season or in the summer, going in and not being able in July or August, shorten that, I don't think we're really helping the kids too much. So it's a way for us to kind of work with the kids, work with families, and you know, learn from it. That's what matters in the long run. You're gonna make mistakes in life, and we just want you to learn and be a better person coming out of it instead of feeling like the world's coming down on you. So those are the big changes I have in the code of conduct that I wrote up to go into effect for the 24-25 school year. That will get sent out with athletic info in the next couple of weeks upon your approval, so I know school.
You know I'm gonna talk, Ryan. First of all, thanks for your work. Outstanding. I really appreciate it. My concern, and everything that you've written up, is if a student goes to middle school to high school for something, it carries over. And I just don't see the benefit of that carrying over when the idea is the kids can self-report different ways to get themselves back on track. I just don't see the benefit of a student starting high school already behind the 8 ball. I just think if we go part of the way and say, hey, we'll wipe your clean slate, we understand, but you know what's that, then they're all moving forward. I could be wrong on this. My gut tells me I don't think we need to be that punitive. If we truly are looking for the best interest of those kids participating, whether it's in drama or whatever, we need to find ways to keep them in instead of finding ways to keep them out. And that's me, right? So.
Oh, and Bob brought this up when I came in. So how the code's written right now is if a middle school kid has a code violation in the spring and they do not serve that suspension, then that code's violation still has to get served in high school to start. And then once they serve it, they're back to ground zero. So what Bob's asking about is, do we just wipe it to get more kids out as freshmen and figure out however that is and put it in to the code, that way we're coming out of middle school? Because like right now, for example, with middle school on the academic side, they don't have an opportunity in summer school to get their grades up. High school has summer school classes. If it's one of the main classes, high school kids can go and get that F and get cleared, and they don't have to serve any suspension because they came in the summer. So middle school, our grades don't carry over after the 4th quarter, which is the grading period for the middle school. It doesn't carry over to the next year already for them. And same with their code violations. If they have 2 in middle school, they come to high school, they're back to 0. So with that being said, you know, it's up to you guys as the board, because this document has not gone out yet. And if you agree with everything else in there and want to, on a contingency of adding in that the middle school, going middle school, high school, we're gonna wipe it clean because we wanna get you involved in stuff and get kids out for stuff. That's up to you, and we can write it in because this document hasn't gone out yet, because I wanted to go to you guys before.
I just see it as an easy gamble. You really can't lose on it, because that way the student knows you. You don't owe the student anything. Like I said, that's just my hang up, Brian. But thank you very much for all of your work.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, Bob.
That's okay.
However, at the same time, I also respect Brian's ability to have autonomy in this. If this is what he's presenting to us. If you want to amend it, what you're presenting to the board, great. If this is what you're asking us to approve, great. This is your department, so.
How frequent do you see this happen? Roughly, less than 10%, less than 5%? You have
Less
no.
than 5, honestly.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of code violations. We had a little more at the middle school level. And we do have a couple students that are on a year-long suspension that didn't appeal it because they have the opportunity to appeal off the year-long, and they didn't take that opportunity. Good example, 2 of this is we had a high school student who had a code violation over the 4th of July. They reached out to us, self-report, and I talked to the parent about it. I'm not gonna let you know exactly what it is until we work on this and see what you guys had to say about it. But that example right there, the parent goes, honestly, Flynn, I'm not even gonna appeal it. Like, she made a mistake, she's gonna serve her suspension, and we appreciate that opportunity, but also there's a lot for us as a family that we need to get across to her that you can't do this stuff, you know, so.
So there aren't a large amount of kids that fall into this category, because I could see them playing you. I could see middle school kids playing.
One of the
you.
things too to consider is you have a lot of kids that are athletes in middle school that are part of club sports, baseball, softball, you name it. It's not a school-sponsored sport, so they're actually pretty limited on their ability, you know, to make up their code violations. Yeah,
Such a short season.
I think there has to be a consequence. You know, in life, when we go from one stage of life to the next, we move from Tomahawk to Wausau. They don't wipe out my Tomahawk issues because I'm in Wausau. I think it can be up to someone's discretion, yours for an example, or a committee's discretion. But I really believe, I can't support Bob's statement of wiping it out, but I think there should be a mitigation process that can take place so that the student can begin their high school career as an active member of a sports team, because we know those kids who participate generally have less issues than those who don't participate.
Yep.
So I just think there has to be a consequence. I don't know, you know, I'm not sure. I leave it up to your discretion. I have no problem wiping it out, but I'm also saying something has to happen to say, you don't just get to erase things that are not appropriate in your life because you went from one place to the next.
And my personal take on that, that's where I kind of feel with, if you had a code violation in the spring, because you sign this document, you're under it for the full year. So it doesn't matter if this happens in July, or if it happens August, or if it happens in January. You're under it, like, it's part of being in co-curriculars. So for me, how I personally feel about it, and just how I am, if they have a violation in the spring, they need to serve something for it. Like, because then, again, you do the comparison equity versus equality all the time. What's equitable versus what's true equality. You got the same kid that's out for football and has a code violation, boom, they're sitting right then and there during that season. And then just because you're not out for something in the spring, we're gonna wipe. So I mean, that's why it's written the way it is right now, because we have, if you look at our code of conduct compared to the other schools in the GNC, we have one of the strictest code of conducts we have for the longest time. With that being said, that's why with the 3 strikes and wipes, because otherwise you got middle school kid who just does something stupid back-to-back days because the frontal lobe isn't developed. Now we're telling them they come into high school and they're zombies, so that's why it's like, okay, we're gonna help you at the middle school level, you're gonna not have this co-curricular ability, but when you get to high school, we're gonna give you another opportunity to come and finish it all, and that's why it wipes that way. So
Middle school students also can avail themselves of the appeal process, correct? So the mechanism is kind of built in there, I feel like. I think
That's fine, Dave. I just don't.
Yeah.
I guess I wanna make sure we're giving kids opportunities, and I don't disagree with sanctions, have no disagreement at all. I just think there's some middle ground there, that you can come up with something that we can still hold the kids accountable, yet allow them a better opportunity.
And how it's written right now, if it is a first code violation, they can appeal it right away and be like, hey, we want to appeal. The appeals committee going in that situation, it's maybe made up of the high school coach instead of the middle school, because it's gonna go into high school, and they say, yeah, well, this summer, this is again where it's doing the restorative that I wrote in. Hey, how about this? How about on the Powell days you go help Connor with 5K and you're picking up trash at the finish line during that event, or you're going to Quahamit's this, talk to Keith Anzi, work it out, and then you come in, you're just gonna sit the first game.
I got no problem with that. I think that's a great compromise myself. That's just me.
I'm sorry. Just a couple of things, Ryan. I assume this applies to all activities, not just
Oh, yeah,
sports?
this includes all school sanctioned clubs,
So
student
co-curriculars.
council, forensics, drama, anything that is a school sponsored club has to do it. So the hard part we run into at the high school level, for example, is with grading and the Fs. So like our 1-act play, they have to do their performance to get to the sectionals and to state. Our lead had an F coming out of the first progress report. Do we affect everybody else in the play because that individual had an F? So what they have to do with the new code coming in is they have to tell me what is equivalent to 60-40-20 within your club. So some clubs have it written up where if you have a code violation, you can't be an officer for a club. You know, some have it written up if you're on a year-long, well, if you're on a year-long suspension, you can't do it anyways, but like, so the weightlifting club, for example, Andy Picing, how his is written up is if a kid has a code violation, they can't be an officer for the club. If you have a first code violation or you're an officer, you're moved as an officer, they move someone into that position. So that's part of it too, that it hasn't been documented real well, and this was the first step for me, because then tomorrow, if this is good, my next step is emails to all my clubs. What is equivalent to this, so I'm gonna get that on paper, and that's how it does. So getting back to that play example, she got a grade up, she was passing. Are we gonna affect the entire play because our lead failed the class 3 weeks before their performance?
Okay, then how does this affect practice?
So, with officer code violations.
I don't care.
Both? Okay, so if you have a code violation, you can still practice. You just can't compete in games. If you have a grade issue, then you have to go and we work with teacher to get help after, and we just communicate with coaches, you might be late, so teachers are here till 3:45. So with grades, so with the track individual I was talking about, he was in her room every day till 3:45. And then you get done, go to track practice. And then with grades, the only thing that grades affect is if you are failing, you can't leave early to travel with the team. Or if you have a code violation, you can't miss school time. But if it's a home game, you can be on the sidelines. If the bus is leaving at 3:20, you're more than welcome to get on the bus and leave. You just aren't gonna miss academic time with
Okay.
any of this stuff.
I think the coaches, at least in the athletic side of it, can have an input and an effect on a student
Mhm.
if he's only coming to practice and he's gonna miss a game or something.
Mhm.
There's some things that
Yep.
I did.
There's
I
so-
had my
there's so
wrestling
many
partner that way,
Yeah.
I had it repeated often.
Then I guess the other thing, I think Dick kind of alluded to it, but how does that affect students coming into the school?
So under the WIA stuff, like, and we're dealing with it right now, we got about 5 kids transferring in. If they have a code violation at another school and they're transferring in, we have to honor that code violation. So whatever that district's code violation is, we have to honor it.
Okay,
So that.
so we would know it anyway?
Huh?
We would know that this student is.
Yep,
has an
because
issue?
anytime a student transfers in, we gotta fill what's called an EVTS form for the WIA. It comes to us, we go and get the transcripts, everything from the school, it comes back, it goes to WIA gives us thumbs up, thumbs down on eligibility. And then secondary, it's the AD's job to communicate that between each other, like, it's my job, and I'm gonna use it, we have a kid coming in that is kind of a weird situation. It's my job to call that school and be like, hey, was there an issue here? Then you don't know, no, okay. Look at the grades, then call WIA because they don't talk about the grade end of it. So, but yeah, so you do honor whatever, if they have a code violation from another school, you do honor, but once then they get here, they're back to ground zero for ours.
Okay,
Cause then they're underneath our code.
okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I do have one more question. So Ryan, but the part about changing activities, that you can deny somebody changing activities, does the appeal process, if the family disagrees with your decision, can they appeal that decision through this process? So the appeal process, I would ask that it's maybe, that would be the only change, that it's made clear that
Okay.
the appeal process applies to that as well.
So add that into the changing activities that they can go through the appeal process, yeah, that's fine. I mean, to be honest, that's another one you don't run into
Right.
that much.
Hopefully never happens, right? But it probably should be spelled out.
It has.
That's all I got.
Okay, any other questions?
You're talking about the dual sport thing tonight as well, or no?
Yeah, after we get through this.
Okay.
Any other questions on the code of conduct? Okay, then entertain a motion to approve the changes to 24-25 co-curricular code of conduct.
Used to be so move.
Second,
I'll second, Calvin.
Is that with the
addition
with
that.
the addition of the appeal from the language? Okay.
are you okay with that?
Mhm.
Dick, Lonnie? Okay. All right, I have a motion, a second to approve with the changes suggested. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, dual sports participation. You got that one too?
Ready for that one? Alright, so this was something on past experiences I've had in other school districts and looking in our surrounding area and also looking at what WIA has been promoting. So in Tomahawk here, we've kind of always taken the stance that kids aren't allowed to participate in 2 sports in a season. If you look at surrounding GNC schools, we're the only school that does not allow. If you look at WIA website this spring, they openly promote kids who are in multiple sports. They did a story on a kid from Bonduel that was at the state baseball tournament and the state golf tournament. They did a story on a kid from Sullivan Springs, Northwood that went state track, and then their baseball team was at state. So with that being said, looking at multiple factors within our district, our declining enrollment, how our demographics have kind of changed within our district, and just looking at other schools around us, this was something I wanted to get some sort of language in, as other GNC schools don't have language. The only one that does have language for this is Northland Pines. So I worked with AJ on kind of what he wrote up this year to put it in and picked his brain, but everybody else just kind of, it's handshake agreements on how it works and how they do it. But for us, with it being a big change and talking to the coaches, there's some coaches that are absolutely all for this and some that are real tentative about it because if your athlete gets in there doing a different sport, how does it affect your team? So I wrote up with language that a student that wants to dual participate or participate in 2 sports in a season must first declare by the dates in this to me that they want to do it. Then the second step is I set up a meeting between me and the coaches to discuss how this is going to work for their specific sports. If it is doable, are we able to give this kid an opportunity to compete in 2? Then the third step is bringing the student, the parents, and the coaches into a room and laying out how it's going to work for this year. With that being said, a student that does do dual sports has to declare the primary sport. And what I mean by primary sport is that takes precedence above all else of the 2 sports. So if the sports are practicing at the same time, if you're a softball player and you want to do softball in your secondary track, you're going to softball practice. Like, primary is number 1. If there's 2 games that night, if there's a track meet and a softball game, you're going to the softball game. You can't go, oh no, that's a fun track meet, I'm going to go run at that track meet. You're saying your primary sport is softball, that's your sport. And then as it goes down, they got to maintain their grades up, which is something I'd watch because it's hard. It's a lot doing 2 things, it cuts time, right? So academically, they got to stay above a 2.0. If they get any code violations, they're done with dual sports, and that code violation will get attached to primary sports. If they fail at any of the progress grades, you're done with dual sports. You obviously aren't keeping up your end. That penalty goes to primary, you're done with secondary. And then it's also written in there that during the season, you can't say, I like my secondary sport better, I'm gonna quit my primary sport and do secondary. If you're doing it, this is very much looking at us having the ability to get our best students an opportunity to go and represent our school and represent our community at a highest level and give them that opportunity. And when I look at this, I really look at track. I look at track and the flexibility of that schedule with the coaches with the spring sports we have, of giving kids an opportunity to go line up on a line and race other people, get faster, learn how to compete with other people. The coaching staff there, they have a wide thing, they all specialize in high jump, this and this. I will tell you right now, there isn't a coach in that program that wouldn't stay a half hour extra to let people get jumps in or work on stuff after their secondary sport. With that being said, I'm a realist. There's going to be issues to work through with it, and that's why I wrote it up in the document I did, strictly under the impression that it's going to be primary. But for us, I think we're at a point that we need to do it. We need to allow students to have that opportunity to do it. And again, maybe it's only affecting 3 kids. 10 years from now, it might be 20. But right now, it's really looking at a select group of kids. Again, we had a girl this spring that wanted to do softball and track. She played softball last year, and then she had to make a decision by start track. She decided doing track, and she had a good opportunity. She did very well in track individually, but then it also took a key piece away from softball team, and she's playing softball in the summer now. But if we give her that opportunity where she can still balance and do it, I think she goes out and competes very well in 2 sports for us and represents her school really well. So.
Sorry. Is that it? Right. You're good. Okay. I guess I'm not opposed to it, but I think you got to watch it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, pretty close. My first thought is, okay, if I got a really good athlete, and we'll pick your track and softball. That's a softball pitcher and a high jumper or 100-yard dash person, whatever it might happen to be. And they pick the primary sport as softball, right? And it gets to a point where these 2 sports are gonna collide. And this individual is a state qualifier in high jumping, but the primary sport is softball, and they got a softball game coming up. You know, I don't know that we got that many great athletes in Tomahawk right now, but it's possible. I'm just saying, I think we gotta watch it, right?
So with that being said, here's a couple things that go along with that. ASME is the activities director with scheduling. And I really do try to prevent us having multiple events on the same night. Obviously, spring creates chaos and it's gonna happen. Secondary to that, how it's written in there is if their secondary sport has a competition that night, they freely can go to that competition, this is primary sport practice. And I'm gonna use an example at school in our conference. So Mosley, our conference player of the year in softball, was also a state qualifier in track. She did not run at the regional because they had the playoff softball game the same night as regional. She was an alternate on the relays. The relays got through. Their sectional semifinal game or regional final game was the same night as sectional track. Sectional track was close enough. Won the softball game, got in a car, drove over, alternate track. Took 2 events state, went and got state medals on the next Friday, and I got to play the next week in at Goodman in state softball. So with that being said, you know, you look at that and they're given probably one of the best athletes in the area that is going to be playing college softball somewhere, an opportunity to go represent their school at the state level and do well at the state level. And that's what I'm truly looking for with this. Is it gonna work perfect every time? No. Are they gonna miss like a high jump? If they don't jump in regionals, they don't get a free pass sectionals.
Right.
But if they're truly a state qualifying high jumper, and that's what they wanna do, then track should be their primary. So next year they can do it, and the example I have from that, when I was at Sheboygan Falls, we had a really good cross-country runner, but soccer was his love. So his freshman, sophomore year, soccer was his primary. And he'd just go run the cross-country meets on Saturday. All of a sudden, next thing you know, he's looking at his times. He's like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. So then he gave up soccer to concentrate his junior, senior year in cross country. He got a D1 scholarship and was state runner up and state champion multiple events in track. And again, that's not necessarily our job to make that decision for the kid. The kid's gonna make that decision for themselves. And if they choose wrong, it's on them, but at least we'll give them an opportunity to compete in a couple of meets outside of the softball games.
Right, I think the other side of it is, I think you have to watch and kind of have an ear to how the other students feel. You know, this person's coming in and taking my spot and not practicing because they're over here doing this, whatever it might be. I mean, it's just, I think we gotta work, you know, just be careful.
I know that's gonna come up too, and here's the honest God truth of that. What happens in real life? You're gonna apply for a job and there's gonna be 60 applicants, right? You might not even get an interview. So what are you gonna do, not apply for the next one? Part of this is adversity to me too. Especially in like timed individual sports, your stuff is gonna be what it is. And you can work really, really hard, sometimes it doesn't pan out. But what do you learn from that? You learn work, you learn commitment. Maybe it's not working too well for you. You gotta adjust what you're doing to get better. So there's also those life lessons to be had. And that, again, that's where this is a tricky scenario with this, and we know that's gonna happen. So, and that's why at the beginning we have the meeting with the parents, the kid coaches and this, and we navigate early on. Because is it gonna work for everything? Probably not. But you have that conversation beforehand so you know what's gonna happen. And at the end of the day, if you get going into it and it's not working, you default back to your primary. That's the one you chose and you said that's the one that mattered to you.
So we've had it in the past, Ryan. I came in the late 70s. We've had people, I coached spring baseball. They would play track. They'd have track in the beginning. We would coordinate with the track coaches when that athlete was coming. It worked out fine. We allowed them the opportunity, as far as I can remember, late 70s, all of the 80s, and the biggest part of the 90s. What you're doing now is good. You're just making them pick a little wise of it. It worked well 20 years ago, 40 years ago. I don't see why it won't work now.
It works well at other districts.
Yeah, it does.
You know, and
The coaches have to talk too.
And we know what issues we're gonna have, and that's why
Right.
everybody on the same page.
This is nothing
If
new.
you read how it's written, one of the biggest things for any athlete that wants to do is you better be good at your communication. And you better be willing
There
to
you go.
openly communicate with your coaches where you're gonna be
Yep.
and what you're gonna be doing.
But it'll work.
It sounds like you've got things well planned out and shows the kids have to take responsibility along with everyone else and commitment and to make decisions in life. And so many times kids come out, or a lot of adults don't know how to make decisions either. I think it's great learning too, life lessons.
So that's the second one I have for you guys, just because it's gonna be a little contentious issue early on here, and that's being real about it. And there's gonna be some hurt feelings, but once it settles in and we have a document in place, we can always refer back to the document. And if the way I have it written up creates issues, that's where if it's board approved and you guys are aware of it, we tweak it as we go. Like, maybe something I have written in there is not right, and we go, after you're doing it, I come back to you guys, be like, hey, this happened, I wanna remove this, all this document at the school level, so that everyone's aware this is getting removed because creative issue. So,
Got a boy.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the activity dual participation.
I so move school ball.
Long second.
Motion is second to approve the activity dual participation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ryan.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, item 11 is the, to approve the, what did I say?
That was
No,
That was 10.
yeah, that was 10, 11, Crossbridge Community
I
Bank.
got enough problems, Bob, don't screw me.
I see 10 in
Enlarge
the
your
back, that ain't
screen.
your bank.
Yeah. Okay, designate the following depositories. Wendell, any comment there?
Yeah, this is same as it's been for quite some time. So Crossbridge Community Bank, we house some of our cash in hand there, stuff there, and then the main bulk of the money that we have available to us, we keep at the local government investment pool, which is designed for obviously local government institutions and has a pretty good interest rate on it.
Okay, any questions? Okay, entertain a motion to approve that designation.
Long so moved.
Second,
Second.
motion is second to approve the following depositories as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Designate the following school district attorneys. Wendell, you want to explain this one to us?
So yeah, in the past, we've designated Weld Riley. I think last year we did one other firm, and then a couple of firms that we use primarily in referendum year. Looking into this, and some other schools do, they just designate and provide me the opportunity to utilize legal services as necessary. And typically when I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna run it through Ron. The attorneys work for the board, they don't work for for me or for the school. So it's just, this would give the freedom to utilize firms when potentially it's a sped law issue. We can find a firm that has a sped law attorney available to us and that sort of thing. Weld Riley would continue to be our general stuff. We use WASB whenever we can because they do have some free services and advice. So it just opens it up and makes it a little easier than what it was in the past, being restricted to certain firms.
Okay. Any questions? Then I'd entertain a motion to approve the district administrator utilizing legal services as necessary.
I so moved, Baloo.
Second,
I'll second, Kevin.
Lonnie. Okay, motion is second to approve the district administrator to utilize legal services as necessary. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Staff reports.
Okay, so one staff report tonight. Typically in July, this is the month that the majority of our admin team is not with us. So Taylor Remington was going to be here this evening to just give an update on community education and her progress moving into the fall. Unfortunately, she called me this afternoon, was pretty sick, and couldn't be here tonight. So I said, no problem, I'll handle this. So this is her typed up notes that I provided for you, and I'll just highlight a couple of pieces that we talked about. First, before I do, I talked to her about having her come in on an every other month basis just to update the board on where she's at. She's gonna have different fall programming from winter programming and then moving into the summer. So I thought it would just be a good timeline to have her get in the habit of every other month. Couple of things that she's got moving into the fall, and you'll see something in the paper coming out, I believe, next week. We did put some advertising in. She currently, based on her survey, had a number of people that wanted to teach a class, and so she's making contact with prospective instructors, putting some advertising out as a final run to try to get things lined up. She's got a pretty hard deadline of Friday, July 26th to have any fall classes in so that she could start to put the programming schedule together to book facilities and to get things ready for those fall classes, supplies ordered and that sort of thing. The bulk of her work lately, and I've been working with her on this, is all of her forms for the handbook for instructors, to the agreements with the instructors, and all of that stuff she pulled together, and we've been working with Davis Rundy, our attorney, to make sure that all the language in there is where we need it to be, and he had a number of things that we have met with him a couple of times just to go back and forth and tweak language. So we're on a pretty good track to having that completed. A couple of other things that she has been in communication with some folks about hosting an athletic officiant training. So that looks like a pretty promising avenue that will have some local folks that would like to train some new and upcoming officials, which, Ryan, as you know, is much needed.
And that's open to high school students too, right?
Yes, it would be. So looking forward to that. Also, some contacts on offering hunter safety, boater safety. We did boaters and snowmobile and boaters and ATV safety during summer school this year, so we do have people in our district qualified to do that, but should be able to offer those through our community ed as well. We couldn't do hunter safety because of the grant. So the grant was a federal grant or tied to ESSER dollars that was left over, and part of that the Biden administration had stipulations that there couldn't be any type of guns or bows or talk of guns or bows included in any of the training, so that excluded hunter safety for us there. Another thing she's working on, and we talked about this a number of times, but she's in contact with some schools that run a volunteer STEP program. We've talked about that in the past. The STEP program is basically
Senior tax exchange program.
It's senior tax exchange. So we would, instead of paying a wage to a person, we basically pay a portion of their taxes, and it goes into that fund of their property tax.
It's like an hourly wage, and some of the schools do it, do you mind?
No, go right ahead.
Like $5 an hour, and it goes up to a certain amount, so it's only like X amount, depends on what your budget is, so you could earn up to $500 on your taxes, and by putting in the time for this. And it can be anything from helping at the lunchroom supervise, helping kids with reading, a variety of different things. The programs, I've gone to a couple of workshops on this over the last few years, and some really great examples. It's a way to get community of the seniors into the school, getting to see what goes on with the kids and all that stuff, and understanding some of the concerns that happen in school. But then there's like a grandparenting effect.
Yep. And a lot of great relationships can be formed and much needed in that way. So it looks pretty promising. It is. We looked into this in the past, and the logistics and the coordination of it can get kind of daunting. But right now, I feel like with Taylor's time vested into this, she'd be able to accomplish that. So
it's a national program, so it's been out there for a while.
What is it again? The acronym?
Senior Tax Exchange Program.
Exchange.
And then lastly, on here, just looking, this is more into the summer of 2025, looking at getting back to a point where we can utilize the equipment that we have, bikes, kayaks, canoes, etc. We used to rent those out, and getting back to a point where we have that program and that availability to our community. So she's, without obviously imposing on other local businesses that do the same thing. So she's been navigating through some of that and in contact with some folks. So she's had a pretty busy summer, but she looks to be on pace to have a pretty significant launch here coming in August and September. So it's all coming together, which is a good thing.
Okay. Any questions?
Maybe she could look into the high ropes course.
She is, yeah.
Okay, I think I had mentioned that to her at one time.
The Abby certification on
Bringing that back in and doing some work with community team building.
Okay, item 13 is approve the Return to Learn program. And Stacy, I think you're going to make a presentation.
Yeah, I'm a lucky person that gets to be here this time. I think Wendell was gonna.
I can tee this up a little bit. So Stacy has been, for her 2 years in the middle school, really taking a approach to gathering, analyzing data, making sure that they're utilizing that information the best they can to make informed decisions. And we know that behaviors in the middle school can be a challenge, and what we've seen data-wise is they've increased over the years to not only in the number of behaviors, but also I think the severity sometimes of behaviors. And a lot of times, one of the things that the middle school, and I can speak to that a little bit just because I spent some time there, but we struggle with resources. Not a lot of resources available in the middle school. So when a student's out of, acting up or having problems in a classroom, there's nowhere to go but the office. There's nothing to really intervene in that process, and oftentimes it's just where a kid needs a little bit of time or maybe a positive relationship that can get them on the right track. In the elementary school, a number of years ago, we started the Hawaii program. It's very much a return to learn program. It just has a different name, but that's been a program that we've seen a lot of success with. And so Stacy's looked at how she can modify that to fit the age group in the middle school, make it more appropriate, and what that would look like. So she presented this to our personnel committee, and I think she's got a great proposal. So with that, I'll turn that over to you. No pressure.
Yeah,
I do think it is a great proposal.
So one of the acronyms you're going to hear me use is ODR. ODR stands for Office Disciplinary Referral. So when we talk about like increase in behaviors and disciplinary referrals, we're going to call it's ODR is what it is. And basically when you look at over the last 2 years, just in our population of students, just in comparison to the elementary, who has, almost double our number. So like one thing that Shar had asked me to do, so I put this in here too, just so you guys kind of get an idea. So like when I talk about the percent increase for ODRs, the first year when we kept the data, we had a population in the middle school of 278 students. And then this year, when you look in the comparison of that, we had 260. Part of that was because our 8th grade students that left was a bigger class than the 6th grade students coming in. But you look at our numbers in comparison to the elementary, you're talking over 500 students. We have more majors, more minors, and more total ODRs than the elementary, and we have half the students. When you look at our increase in behaviors, our majors went up 27% from last year to this year. Our minors went up just a little bit, 1%, and our total ODRs went up 10%. So again, you're talking major behaviors that are impacting not only that student's learning, but all of the students in that class. And that is what Wendell was saying. We don't have the resource in the middle school where some of these students that come that have major behaviors, it's a teacher managed major, but they might not have the resources to deal with it in the moment. So where do they send them? They go to the office. And we have myself, Melissa, and Cassie, our school counselor, in there. And we have literally 2 rooms, and then half the time, if those are full, then we have someone sitting in front of Melissa, maybe 2 people there. I mean, there's no space, and there's constant traffic in and out. And a lot of times a kid that comes in there might need only just a break. They're dysregulated, and they just need to regulate. But the problem is they are disturbing the learning of everyone else in that classroom too. And it's not that they even need to see me necessarily. Sometimes they might need to talk to Cassie if it's some type of emotional issue that might be going on or something like that has some bigger needs. But a lot of times it's not. And half the time they're getting sent from the office right back to class. But the problem is they're also losing learning time. Okay, so with this proposal, much like Wendell was saying with the elementary, we would have a room that would be staffed that would be able to help the student when they come in to not only help them regulate and give them a place to regulate themselves if they don't need an adult interaction, but also a place that they could be still participating and doing some learning, right? So they might get sent with an assignment. If Melissa's answering the phone, she's got a parent, Cassie's busy, I'm busy, that student comes to the office with an assignment, who's checking on them? Nobody. This room and this person would give that student a place to be able to, once they are regulated, be able to not lose the learning time. And also not disrupt the learning of everybody else in that classroom. So before the school year ended, all the staff in the middle school and all of the elementary staff participated in the first 4 modules of training for Love and Logic. And you might have heard when Wendy talked about that, they offered parenting classes for that this fall. Our staff, K through 12, is also going to be participating in Love and Logic training for the classroom. And the first 4 modules of the course, it was awesome. I sat in with the staff, and it's a lot about how to diffuse behaviors and how you talk with kids and setting up like routines and things in your classroom of how to deal with it. And one of the things that they talk about that's a crucial piece of that is called the recovery room, which is basically what this is. We just don't want to call it a recovery room because that doesn't have a very positive connotation. Return to learn is more positive, and the elementary is changing their language to match that as well. But this would help us be able to implement this Love and Logic classroom to fidelity. Do it in a way that we're actually doing it consistently, partnering with the teachers. And making sure that the teachers are also working with this person that's staffing this room and how they're going to handle things coming in and out. Part of this whole planning, if this would be approved, would be to make sure that we're setting kind of guidelines and procedures so that kids just aren't like, I'm sending you to this room and, you know, there you have it. There would be regulations and policies and procedures that we would develop to not only make sure that there's communication between the person staffing that room and the classroom teacher, but the student and everybody involved. So it would help us be able to not only, you know, help a student regulate, but also not affect the other students in the classroom as well. And right now, we just don't have that resource in the office, and you can see that the behaviors and how they've increased, we need something like that. And when you talk about like just the amount of students right now that, that the policy that we had in place, that we put in place for promotion, retention, and placement, unfortunately, there's a significant population of students in our 7th grade going into 8th grade class that affects. And a lot of it has to do with dysregulation and loss of learning time. And in order for those students to be successful and the steps that we're putting in place to monitor them throughout this next school year, we need to have something that we're able to assist them with their learning, but also not disrupt the learning of everybody else in that class. It's, you know, when you look at that class as a whole, you're talking, you know, a significant chunk of students that would affect. And we want to make sure that we're trying to be proactive so that we want to send them to hopefully to high school in a much better position than where they currently are at right now. We had a lot of meetings with parents at the end of the year about how we were going to set things up for this coming school year with that group of students, just scheduling with classes and monitoring things and how we're going to monitor them throughout the year. And this would also help us just have another resource that we're using to make sure that we are keeping a close eye on those students as well. And not, like I said, not just those students, but there's a lot of kids that come in that just, middle school's a tough time. You got hormones going up and down, you got anxiety, you have, you know, something that, you know, a kid might come into the building that they have something going on at home, and when they start the day, they're just not regulated to be there to learn. And this would help them be able to have a soft landing spot and then be able to go to class. Our special education students have something like this right now that they're able to utilize, and our regular education students don't. So it would be a very good asset for us if we were able to have this program approved.
How many kids could you have in a room like that at a time?
We're gonna have to, those are things we're gonna have to figure out, and it's also gonna depend truly on the person that we have to staff this room, because it's all about relationships and learning what makes a student tick, how you approach a student, how you talk with them. And I think that's something that once we get this, if we get this approved, that we need to sit down and talk about. You know, part of the thing that we have in our fall in-service is when we did the first 4 modules with our staff, we had a lot of great discussion when it was done, and part of it was, okay, how are we realistically going to implement like a recovery room and have this be working? So that's something that we all as a staff as well need to figure out, okay, how are we gonna implement this? We have slotted time in the fall to get together back again before we go into the next stage of like the 5 through 9, the back end of the program, to figure out how we wanna look as a staff to implement that. But Cassie, our school counselor, does have experience with this, and she's our trainer for Love and Logic. So her and I have been talking just about how, if this were to be approved, how we want to set up the room, how we want to, go about making sure that it's not just you come in and it's like an in-school suspension room. It can't be that type of environment. It needs to truly be, some kids might need a quiet spot. Some kids might need to talk to that person. Some kids might need to put some headphones on and, decompress. So we gotta figure out how we wanna set that room up too for kids.
Because could you see kids playing, that we're gonna act up at this time, okay, set your watches so we can go.
Yeah,
Do you
I
see
don't,
anything like that
we're
going
onto
on?
those games.
Okay, good.
Especially with the bathroom
Yeah.
usage and things
Yeah.
like that, so you would know the kids that would be trying to do something like that, and that wouldn't be, that's not the purpose of this, so we would.
It's a pretty structured environment in there.
Good.
Yeah.
So that the kids realize, no, it's not a time to meet up with my friend because I'm gonna be
Correct.
stuck doing something.
And that might be making another step farther down the road to my office. No, I'm just kidding. But no, that's, we definitely would be monitoring that too.
We heard Guy talk for at least 2 years about consistency and bringing his staff to the point of having consistent definitions of tier 1, tier 2,
Yep.
tier 3. Where do you feel your staff is at now, looking at the discipline? I mean, they've been coming to you in the office of the guidance staff. How long do you feel till, this time, how much energy is gonna be put into the consistency piece?
I honestly think our middle school staff does a tremendous job of being pretty normed on what is a office managed behavior, what's a teacher managed behavior, how they handle it. Sherry and I spent a lot of time last summer like revamping what that matrix looks like for both the high school and the middle school, and we rolled it out and put it all out with both of our staffs, middle school and high school. And I can tell you that the stuff that they're writing up and how they're handling it, I don't think it's so much norming. I think they're pretty consistent on it. I don't think there's a lot of I'm playing mom off of dad going on, you know what I mean? The one thing that I do think that this training will help with when we talk about Love and Logic is how we're talking with students and the consistent language that we're using with students, and every classroom being consistent with that language. I think when it comes to how they handle behaviors, I think that's consistent. I think it's more about how we approach and the language that needs to be more consistent amongst everyone. So it doesn't matter like if I'm a 6th grade teacher and I see 8th grade teacher or 8th grade students coming down the hall, they know that I'm using the same language and I have the same, norms that the 8th grade teachers do. One of the cool things with this program too, like they have Love and Logic classroom posters that you purchase and you put up, and I think that's going to help too, like keep that language consistent. And that's the one thing we thought, again, just district wide, if they're implementing this in the elementary, we're doing it in the middle school, they're doing it in the high school, as a student moves through the system, they're going to have that consistent approach. Now, how you deal with an elementary student is different than how you deal with a middle school student versus a high school, but if we're using that same type of mentality and approach with kids, I think that's really going to help.
And you answered my second question. It sounds like there's a good continuum from elementary to middle to high school.
Yeah.
That's going, a student who is having issues is going to be able to live in that system because it's the same system.
Yes, and that's the goal, and that's the one thing I'm really excited with Sherry going down there. Her and I have worked together for a long time, and just keeping that consistent language all the way through. And then so when kids come up in that transition piece between 5th and 6th grade, you're still using the same type of language and approach with kids. So
At times it'd be great if we could have it in volunteer organizations too, like working with Girl Scouts and 4-H and all that stuff, that you have the same language, because I know They get out of school and it's
And
like,
that's,
oh
I
my
think, part
God.
of like when you talk about love and logic training and you have the parenting classes, you have the classroom, like those are types of things where we could offer those types of things to community groups. This is how we are, like, the bus
Churches.
drivers, the custodians, everyone needs to be, that's why when we started in the spring, doing all of elementary and all of middle school in modules 1 through 4. When we come back in August, there is a catch-up period for all of the new staff, high school, and all of our paras and anyone else that's in the building to catch up to 1 through 4, and then we're gonna be moving on. So everyone's getting that training, because honestly too, paras work so closely and directly with the students that everyone needs to be on the same page and have the same approach.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? Well, before we take a vote, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Stacy, for all the work on this.
Thanks.
I'm sure it's was time consuming, and I'm sure it's gonna get approved, but I think it'd be helpful to the board too if sometime during the school year, not right away, but maybe, first part of next year or whatever, if you and the person that's in this room could come in and make a presentation to the board of how it's been effective and how it's going. I think we would like to hear that.
I think it's a really good idea, and Cassie and I were actually just talking today, planning of how we're gonna finish the rollout in the fall, just in staff meetings, and how we wanted to approach the November staff meeting and getting the staff, back together again of, okay, we're gonna revisit, all right, we've rolled this out now for 2 months, we've implemented this, how are things going? Like, again, the same type of thing. So I think that would be great, because I think that the goal for this person, one, to be able to, hopefully they don't have students in their room constantly. That's the goal, right? And if they don't, I would love to see them, one, be able to attend at least one team meeting, hopefully with maybe Cassie, myself, and the team at the grade level meetings, so they're part of the team. And the teachers are able to communicate with them and talk about expectations and how things are going. And also, if there's no one in that room, have them go into a classroom. Or maybe some of the kids that are frequent flyers of this room are, just to show like, okay, I'm in this room, I'm also part of the staff, I'm helping out, I'm like, I think the more that this person can be visible and be a part of the team and have that team approach, I think that's beneficial, because I think, again, not only is it important with how they approach a kid and talk to them and understand how to make them tick, the more a kid sees that you care about them and that you're able to go that extra mile with them, that does a world of good. I mean, it might just be asking them about one thing that you might have heard them talk about 2 weeks ago, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that person remembered that. And so I think, the goal would be to make sure that they're very involved in the middle school, throughout the day, not just in that room by themselves.
Okay. And I entertain a motion to approve the Return to Learn program for the middle school.
I so move, School Board.
Second.
I second.
Motion is second to approve the Return to Learn program for the middle school. Any discussion?
I just want to guarantee that our budget supports this program into the future.
Yeah.
Because this, to me, is not the kind of position that if you come into a financial crunch, that you cut.
Yep.
Because it would take a significant amount of fire out of the program.
Yeah, very much so. This is one of the things that, I told the committee, and I'll say to the board, there are these opportunities that we have that come up where we can make an investment into a school, into our district, so on and so forth. I feel like that's what this is. This is an investment, not just in one person, but in a program that's gonna benefit a lot of kids moving forward, so.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks,
Thank
Stacy.
you.
You got it.
And I will give you a preemptive, the staff thanks you as well, so thank you very much.
Okay, item 15, changes to the 24-25 calendar. I guess it says mostly to do with cost savings, right?
Yeah, this is just a tack change in dates. It's nothing added or subtracted. We're just shifting our new staff in service a couple of days forward to accommodate some language in our insurance policy in the previous.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion to approve the change to the calendar for 24-25.
So, go ahead, Charles. So moved, Kirsch.
Second,
Second, Baloo.
motion is second to approve the changes to the 24-25 district calendar. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thanks for saving us money.
Yeah, kudos to Jeffrey.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
16, policy 2264 and 2266. When will these, what you refer to?
Okay, so, I referred to these earlier. Policy 2264 is the new policy developed by Neola with the requirements related to the Title IX changes that go into effect on August 1st. So this is, typically we would have a first and a second reading. It will go through a process. Because this was released late and needs to be in place by August 1st, it falls under a different category. We do have a policy 131.1 that allows us to just push this forward in this type of a situation. So.
Okay, then we'll do them separate. Entertain a motion to approve policy 2264.
I so move Swante.
Long second.
Motion is second to approve policy 2264. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Policy 2266. Entertain a motion to approve that policy.
Swante move.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion is second to approve policy 2266. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 18, approve employee handbook changes for 24-25.
Okay, a couple highlights here that, so I provided two attachments for you. One is the current employee handbook, so you could see and compare the language. The other one was the proposed language changes, and I made a slight change to this. So this is if you looked at this yesterday, you'll see that this is slightly different on number 7, which is the pay scale. So when we get to that, just so you know, if you saw that it was different, that I'll explain that one in a second. Just a couple of the highlighted things in here. Much of this is the language is, just minimal changes. Number 1 just changes and is more focused on language that it is more in line with a salaried position versus an hourly position. So I think that's a good thing to convey. Number 2 looks at, I apparently have never, when we went from 4 days of in-service in the summer on your own to 2, we didn't make that change or that correction in our handbook, so that just changes that. Number 3 is a little bit of a change. So we, first and foremost, I feel like this, even though it's communicated currently, is not communicated clearly enough in our staff handbook. So basically it would just put a stipulation in that says if you utilize sick leave to extend a vacation or you use it on an in-service day without pre-approval, that you would be required, it would not have to be requested, you would be required to provide not only a medical note, but a medical note that was specific enough to outline the time that you used to be gone. So if it's 2 hours, or if it's 4 hours, or if it's 8 hours, it doesn't have to say specifically what, the details of why you were at the doctor or anything else, but it would, at least the doctor would justify the time that you used. The second part of that, or bullet of there, deals with leave without pay. And this would just provide some consistent language guiding when it's appropriate for leave without pay to be approved. So anything consistent with family and medical leave, or anything that supports the celebration of an immediate family member, and there's a couple of examples. It could be a destination wedding for a brother or sister, spouse, that sort of thing, grandchild, who knows. Graduation from military training, or even your child's outside activity or competition. There are times over the course of 9 months where people end up using personal leave for important things, and then their son or daughter qualifies for a state competition, and it's really hard to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't go to that, right? We want to do better with that and make sure that that our families are able to be there to support each other. So it just guides that a little bit, and what it does is then eliminate some of the requests to say, I wanna use leave without pay in the middle of January to go on a vacation, because Disney World's cheaper in January than it is in March, right? So some of that stuff that we feel it's, we don't want our teachers outside of the classroom. We'd rather have them plan within that, their vacation windows for that. The other bullet in that portion addresses an issue that I think we've long been dealing with. And so currently we allow staff to bank up to 120 days of sick leave to be cashed in basically at retirement and used to supplement purchase of health insurance and health related items. They're allowed to bank up to 130 for usage if a catastrophic event or something like that were to occur. But what happens is as a staff member gets there and they have 120 days, and they might have 10 years to go before retirement or 5 years to go before retirement, there's still 10 days given to them each year. They just can't bank them. So it puts an employee in a position where they say, if I don't use this time, I lose this time, right? And even though, a lot of us maybe don't agree with that mentality, the reality of it is that's the way it is. So in an effort to meet in the middle with this a little bit, what I'm offering or proposing is that we put language in the handbook that would say that we would purchase any of those unused days back, if only if and when a person is in that 120 day range, that we would purchase any unused days at the end of the year back at half the cost of a sub. So this is consistent with some language in some other handbooks from area schools. So I purposely didn't say, currently that would be $70. I don't know what the cost of the sub would be in 5 years' time, so I didn't want to have to remember to change this. I just said it would be 0.5, whatever the cost of that sub would be. That essentially gives us a 50% savings on them using the day. And I feel like it's an incentive for them to have at least a little added income at the end of the year that they could use for something they wanted.
I have a question. So you're saying if they are at 120, okay? But let's say I'm at 120 this year, we start next year, I get my 10 days. I don't want to be selling those because that's my usage for that year, because at 120 is what you can bank.
Right.
So should it be at 130 for the language? Because you want to give them that 10 days that last year.
Well, they don't have to, if I'm reading this correctly, they don't have to make that decision at the beginning of the year.
Correct.
They can,
Do it at
you
the
can
end.
have
Do it
the
at the
10
end of the year.
days, and then if you don't use it at the end of the year, you're gonna get paid out half.
If you want to bank up to the 130.
Well, it says once they have accumulated that 120.
Yeah, so it'd be I would, in my mind, it was then that following year. So if
After they.
yes, so the following year. So
At
if you
the
got,
end of that
end of
current
that-
contract.
At the end of that
so if I sit
contract,
at
you
110
should
this year and
clarify
they
that.
give
You're
me
right.
110,
Yeah.
I can't sell
The end of
back.
contract
Yeah,
year.
that year would be
Yes.
the following year where I'm going into the year with 120.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, because you're still gonna have 130 then.
130 that you could
Yeah,
bank for usage. Yeah, or you could sell those back if you didn't want.
You see what I mean?
Would you rather have it read 130? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying,
But then it'll raise to 140, no, I think you cap it at 120.
Well, it's capped at 130
It is
now for
capped at
usage.
120.
120 plus 10,
Yeah, 120 plus that.
that's what it is.
So,
It's
I
just
do
the way,
think that, I would agree that you need to clarify that sentence.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can do that. I can add it in there.
At
Is it,
the end of the
is that,
contract,
are we
That's
on the
what
same
I'm
page
saying.
though?
I'm just
They
saying
have
that
to-
somebody goes, oh, I'm at 120 here, I've got 10 days, I want 5, I'm gonna sell you back 5
And then puts them at
and keep
5,
5, but then they go through the year and let's say they need those 5. Oh, well, now what?
Yeah, for sure. So it wouldn't happen until the end of the year, whatever they have remaining, then they would sell back.
Right.
Yeah, in July.
So that you probably
Or
should put an example or
nature.
something in there so that
Sure.
it's
I'll
clear,
make a note for that.
something to
Are there
clarify
many
that.
staff that are at that level?
Not a lot, but enough that it can become
10% of the staff,
Difficult
50% of the staff?
maybe, I would say right now 10. We had a lot of retirements this year, so I would say probably around 10%. That'd be about
Just
16
curious.
people.
That might be fine.
Yeah,
But-
so somewhere in there.
Any other questions? Okay, entertain a motion to approve the employee handbook changes for 24-25.
Swanty, so move.
Second?
First, second.
Motion is second to approve the employee handbook changes with the suggestions made for 24-25. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item 19, academic standards, Wendell?
Yep, so traditionally, each year in July, we have to make a declaration. We traditionally use the DPI standards, so this would just be a declaration that we'll be using the DPI standards for the 24-25 school year.
Any questions? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve the DPI standards as presented.
So
Excuse me, so move.
First, second.
Motion is second to approve the academic standards as presented, DPI academic standards. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 20, public comment.
I have some public comment. I want to thank the teachers. I don't know if you got to see the paper this last week about the Beyond Crayons and Chromebook with the Star Foundation. And they did a nice article on the teachers and all that, and for the teachers putting their time and effort into doing that. I'm on the Star Foundation, and I'm glad that we've got teachers who will go above and beyond the classroom and do that type of thing. Encouraging them to do that. So we support both schools on that. And the other public comment comes from Historical Society. We had a kindergarten reunion last Friday. We had 90 former alumni show up at the kindergarten, the oldest one being 92 years old.
Whoa.
And that building's been a kindergarten for 88 years, and I think she was probably one of the first ones there, but it was a great time. There was a variety of people to, the school closed in 1979 or 80, 79 I think was the last class that came into.
Our son was there.
Because 80 is when the school district took it over, but there were some younger people there too, and they had a great time.
Good, thank you. And along that line, I guess I'd comment, I think that the Washington School Park is coming along very nicely. It's really looking good.
Oh, yeah, that was my other hat that I had on tonight, so I was late, so we had to have a discussion on that, but nobody will burn their feet on that black surface. It will not be black. It's going to be poured in place, and we're going to need volunteers to stay overnight so people don't go out. That'll happen next week. But it's coming along, and it'll probably be the end of August is where it's looking at. People don't understand there's still a lot of work that has to go in. Right. There will not be a big fishing hole on the northeast corner, that hole in there. That's for drainage. It will be covered. It'll be leveled.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah.
I thought it was made to play. It'll roll down the hill or something.
But I had a discussion with Amanda. The Park and Rec meeting was canceled. We had to clarify some things. So
okay.
It'll be the end of August when that whole thing is coming to fruition.
Any board referrals?
Yes, I had a message that I received from the lawyer that we had with the apportionment that we had conference on, and I sent you a message about that, and he's working with another school in northern Wisconsin that's early stages of apportionment, and was wondering if we could share information with them. He hasn't used her name because it was legal and all that stuff. Wendell got back to me, it was okay, and I just wanted to bring it here to let you know that I had that request. I said we have a board meeting tonight, I'll bring it up to see if there's any concerns.
I don't see any. Is that September we vote on that? Isn't it?
At the end of the meeting.
Can I put an absentee vote in for that one since I won't be here? I just thought I'd ask.
Okay. Last closed session, entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Long, so move.
Second?
Baloo, second.
Okay, roll call please, Colleen.
Yep. Ron,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Hughesby,
Yes.
Kirsch,
Yes.
Kissinger Wolf,
Yes.
Scuba,
Yes.
Swinty.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
September, I might be here.
Thank you.
Bye.
When is your surgery? Next month. I might be next. I think you will. That's okay.